In this Money Mash episode, we're going to talk about setting up your own business and many of the ins and outs to getting it off the ground, including selecting the right business name, whether you should incorporate your business or not, registering your new business, and whatever comes to mind along the way. Well, let's get right into it. Welcome to the Money Nest.
Welcome to the Money Nest, your source to not becoming a financial liability. You will learn how to become fiscally responsible, save money, and grow that nest egg of yours. The Money Nest is proudly sponsored by A1 Bookkeeping Services, serving small to medium-sized businesses with bookkeeping and providing tax services to people just like you. You can find out more info about them at a-1bookkeeping.com. Now, here are your hosts, Suzanne and Mark McKinney.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark, and I'm happy to welcome you to this special episode of The Money Nest.
And I'm Suzanne. Welcome, one and all. Before we move forward, we want to take a moment to remind you to please like, share, and subscribe to The Money Nest. This allows us to have the widest distribution possible. It also helps us to share the content of this podcast and also gives us encouragement to upload more episodes. Your help in getting the word out is very appreciated. Once again, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Money Nest. Like I said earlier, this is a special episode of The Money Nest. Now, I know what that means because I'm on the inside of things, but let's fill everybody else in, Mark.
I can give you more details on this. A Money Mash episode is intended to be a quick and unscripted chat between us and talk to you about money matters and other related topics. No script, just a simple discussion that everyone can understand, all while hoping to spark similar discussions around your family's dinner table, perhaps.
We'll provide a healthy sprinkling of these little episodes here and there so that you can get your fill and help to provide our insight on the topics we're discussing. We hope you enjoy this new format.
Okay, let's start close to the beginning because the idea of a business is the first step, but we don't really want to get into how to pick a business. That's not really the purpose of this episode. But one of the very first steps is certainly picking a business name.
That definitely is one of the first steps because you can't pick anything else until you've got that business name. You've got to know what you're going to call your business moving forward because you can't even register anything without having that business name. But you do want to keep in mind that you want to stay away from extremely generalized names like construction services or renovation services, that kind of thing. It is definitely too generic. You need to pick something that identifies you against your competitor. Okay, so you don't want to just do maybe Frank's Construction Services. You might want to say Frank's Fast Customer Services. Something along those lines that's going to make you more identifiable from your competitor.
Because a name like Frank's Construction Services it's kind of dry and dull. Nobody's going to remember that very well. But if you have something more catchy, remember your business name is an advertising tool. It's your first and foremost piece of advertising that you're going to have. And it really costs you nothing. Once it's set up and registered, your name will advertise itself, but it has to be catchy. If you look like other big businesses that are very catchy in their own names, they've made an international or national name for themselves. So you too, no matter how small you think you are, you want to keep it fun and lively and interesting. But it also depends on the nature of your business, whether it's a fun type business or it's more of a professional services.
That's right. You don't want to say like you're running a fun accounting business. That just doesn't make sense. But if you do something that is an entertainment, absolutely throwing the word fun in there is not a bad thing because it tells people that the services you're providing for them are fun.
Kind of like if it's John's Fun Factory. Well, that means you're going to go there and have fun. It's John's place to do that or whatever. Or Atlantic Fun Factory.
That's much better than just going to John's Place, right? John's Place is kind of really, when you think about it, lame sounding because people are like, well, I'm just going to go and hang out at John's Place.
Yes, absolutely. And it doesn't have to have your name, like I said, Atlantic or national or regional or even just other similar names that are just catchy. Just keep in mind, once again, that your business name is your advertising tool. Take your time, think it through, make sure it's right. Bounce it off a few people, do some web searches, make sure the name doesn't exist in your area where you're going to register, and take your time. That's all you have to do. And when people say that they like it or don't like it, take their word for what it's worth. And if they say, oh my goodness, that's great. Trust me, you'll know your name when you hear it. If somebody else thinks of it or you think of it, when you hear it, you're going to love it. If you don't love it, keep moving on.
That's right, because you definitely want to make sure that you've got a catchy name that people are going to remember. You do not want your customers to walk away from you and say, what was that business name again? Because that's not good. One of the things that you definitely want to consider, well, it's things that we used to have to consider years ago before we had Google and all these other search engines that we can find businesses online now. When we had the phone book and that was the only option years ago, we would have to consider things like an alphabetical listing because you always wanted your business name to show at the top of that listing. So that if you opened up the phone book to taxidermists, you wanted to be at the top of the taxidermy list. Or if you wanted to be in another category like hair salons, you wanted to be at the top. So everybody years ago used to have this rush to have an A at the beginning of their business name.
And that was mainly meant because when you go down in the listings, like in that category, people would start at the top of the list, work their way down at a habit. Very few people would just pick one at random and start calling or start at the bottom. They would start at the top of the list, work their way down, and you want to catch them before they get too tired of dialing.
That's exactly why a lot of businesses are entitled with the first letter A, especially if they've been around for a long time. I guess now I've got a name. How should I set my business up? Should I look at incorporating it or not?
Well, incorporating is entirely up to you. You can have a sole proprietorship, a partnership if there's more than one partner. That's not, the business isn't incorporated. But if you are incorporating or have a limited company, they're much of the same thing, then you'll need to make sure you investigate that property because there's financial obligations on your behalf if you have a sole proprietorship or partnership, and or if you have an incorporated or limited company. It sounds kind of complicated, but it's really not that complicated. And we don't really want to get into the ins and outs of if you should incorporate or not. That's not the intention of this podcast. But who should you call?
Well, you can call whoever you expect to use for your bookkeeping, your accountant, or a lawyer. A lawyer is going to charge you typically a higher rate because they have more experience with it. But just because they have more experience with registering a business doesn't necessarily mean that they have more experience with the tax side of things. So you need to make sure that you dot the I's and cross the T's. And I would recommend that you start with your bookkeeper or accountant.
And if you don't make the right move of incorporating or having a sole proprietorship at the beginning, it can cost you money in the long run.
That's right.
Because there's more expenses to flip-flop from one to the other. And then there's tax obligations by flip-flopping.
We've actually come across that before, that a client didn't register their business name properly and then it ended up getting used by somebody else. So when they went to go and register their business properly, even though they'd been operating for 10 years with this other business name, they couldn't have that business name because they didn't register it properly.
Registering is key as well. Really important. You know, you don't want to jump into a business and then just start operating and start building buildings or grooming dogs or selling candy or what have you. Or you want to make sure that you get all your ducks in a row. There's a lot of work to do when you first start a business.
Oh,
that
yeah.
You have to make sure that you understand what you're getting into and what your obligations are, even before you even start cutting the first dog or you sell the first piece of candy.
Really, really true, Mark. And you got to be careful when you're doing that kind of stuff because you can't jump both feet in. Some people find that if they don't do it and they don't organize themselves effectively, that they feel overwhelmed. It does not have to be an overwhelming feeling. It does not have to be anything at all like that. You just need to know what your steps are. And by getting somebody on board that can help you with that from the very beginning will certainly make the transition and the starting of a business much, much easier and much more palatable.
So even if you feel overwhelmed of choosing a business name or incorporating or not and all that sort of thing, it's really, you could do all that literally in a couple of hours as long as you have your business name chosen correctly. It's not going to take weeks. If it takes you weeks to choose a business name and figure out if you're incorporating, you've done something wrong already. Even if it takes days, like a couple days maybe to choose your business name, but really any more than that, spinning your tires, you're not putting enough thought into it.
That's very, very true. So now the next thing I want to find out about is, do you plan on filing your profits from your business on your personal taxes? Yes or no? And what do you have to do with those depending upon which way you choose? If you are planning on filing everything so that it shows up on your personal tax return and that you pay taxes based on your own tax rate, you're considered a sole proprietorship, meaning you are the business. That's why it's included on your personal tax return. Yeah, it's not something that you're normally going to see in with the T4 area or your W2 area. It's a different section of the tax return, but it's still filed on your personal tax return. But if you don't want your business activity to show up in your personal tax return, that's when you need to look at considering incorporating.
There's lingo that we use of forms or some of the rules, the laws. It all depend upon where you live, depending upon your state, your province, your country, even your county. It all just depends on where you live. So you make sure you call your local authorities to find out what your obligations are of how to file your income from your business and because of how your business is structured. At the end of the day, a sole proprietorship is a sole proprietorship and a corporation is an incorporation. So, but it depends on how they treat that moving forward.
That's right. And a sole proprietorship, just keep this in mind. If you're a sole proprietorship, you are the business. Therefore, it's all on you, including the taxes. With a corporation, it is a separate legal entity, which means a company files its own taxes and it's going to be separate from you. If you can keep that in mind, golden.
And a lot of these obligations, too, are really important to follow through at the beginning, of course. But you can have a lot of this stuff out of the way, most of it out of the way within the first week. And then you can start focusing on buying your equipment, getting your name out there, starting,
setting up your bank account. That's one of the first steps you got to look at for sure.
That's right. Your bank account, too, is equally as important as everything else. But nothing moves until you choose a business name. Well, you got to choose what you want to do first, and then you choose your business name. You got to do it in that order. And then, like I said, choose your business name first because, when you open your bank account, you get insurance, you register your name through your state or province, and you incorporate your business. It's all going to revolve around your business name. So your business name is like, boom, right up there at the top of the list.
Oh, for sure. So we've already talked about setting up a business bank account. You need to do that to make sure that you are separating your business activity from your personal activity. So, and it also will allow you the opportunity to keep those purchases separate, which is something you definitely need to look at doing. You need to keep your personal stuff out of the business.
Be very sure that you keep the two identities separate from your business and your personal. It's way too easy to blend them in there, and then you're just going to get yourself in a financial hardship trying to sort all that mess out. And you could be overclaiming your expenses when you shouldn't be. And you could be underclaiming your revenue like you shouldn't be. And you want to make sure you're honest. Don't do things under the table. Don't do anything weird. Get yourself good accounting software, good bookkeeper, accountant, whatever, to sort yourself out. A good bookkeeper is worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely.
They can help save you money, keep you on the straight and narrow. If you're trying to do it yourself, you may not know all the tax laws and you can find yourself in trouble.
Absolutely. Like one of the simplest things that a good bookkeeper is going to tell you is to make sure you keep all your receipts for all your business expenses. Those little debit card slips that you get that come out of the debit machines and they don't have any explanation on it of what you're purchasing. It doesn't have the explanation of the amount of tax, anything that you've purchased at all. It just gives you the value of what you've paid. They are not valid. You can't use them at all. They don't tell you anything except for the fact that you went down to your local Starbucks or went down to your McDonald's and you paid $12 or $13 for whatever. We need to know what the whatever is. If you don't have the whatever, you don't have an expense.
Along the way, once you get your business up and running and you've registered it, you chose your business name, you have your location if you need it, your vehicles and whatever, and your inventory, and you're cutting dogs, selling candy, making clothing, building buildings, whatever the case might be. It doesn't matter because business is business. It doesn't matter what you do. But you have to make sure that you pay attention to your financial obligations when it comes to reporting to your government agencies, again, for national, provincial, state, or county, whatever the taxes you have to pay or whatever fees you have to pay to these people. You have to make sure you file your paperwork on time. You have to make sure you pay them on time, because if you don't, you won't be in business for very long, because you're going to be shut down in financial hardship, which you don't want to go. You don't want to take a new business and run to the ground. that easily. So be very sure that you know what you're doing, and ignorance is not an excuse. Just because you didn't know doesn't mean it's okay this time, kind of thing. You got to know.
No, trust me, the government is not going to give you any leeway. The rules are the rules, whether you didn't know or not. Ignorance is not an excuse. That is definitely one of the things that they will first and foremost tell you. Best thing that you can do is make sure that you keep everything. If you keep everything that relates to your business, if it has a number on it and it's related to your business, it should be in with your monthly paperwork. Very, very simple. And you should keep each month segregated from previous months. But I guess, Mark, the next question that I have is, if I use a vehicle for business, can I claim anything related to that vehicle?
Yeah, you absolutely can. It depends on the nature of business for starters. Some businesses will require a vehicle, like if you're a contractor. Sometimes if you own a convenience store, then you might have to pick up inventory. In most cases, a business vehicle is quite all right. It doesn't necessarily have to be owned by the business as well or registered by the business. It depends if you're a sole proprietorship or partnership or even incorporated and how things get claimed. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But yes, bottom line, you can claim a vehicle, but it depends on how you're structured, will depend upon what you can claim and how you claim it and how much you can claim and things like that. And it'll also depend on your limits for your income tax wise.
Right. So if you've got a sole proprietorship, you have to understand that you claim your vehicle at tax time. You get a percentage of a reduction for your taxes based on your business driving. You need a mileage log with your start odometer at the beginning of the year, and you need your mileage log also has to indicate what your mileage is come the end of the year. That gives you your total. You also need to keep track of all of the driving you do in between. That gives you your percentage. So let's say, for instance, you start with 10,000 kilometers in your vehicle. You end up with 30,000. That means you drove your vehicle for a total of 20,000 kilometers. We need to know out of that 20,000 kilometers, how many were for business and how many were for personal. So if you keep a mileage log, and let's say, for instance, your mileage log works out that 15,000 kilometers was for business purposes, that means that you are able to claim 75% of your gas, repairs, maintenance, insurance, registration, and you get a percentage of those as a reduction for your taxes. Now, and you also get a value for that for tax, for sales tax as a credit through here in Canada for the GST, HST programs.
And claiming a vehicle is one of the biggest misunderstood expenses that you could do for a business. It's often a disaster in a lot of cases because the biggest problem is people don't keep mileage logs. Every time you got to go somewhere, you got to write down your mileage. Now, if the vehicle's owned by the business, you only use it for business, you don't take it home at night, it stays at the business, then the mileage log, it isn't important. But if you take the vehicle home, use it for personal and business, and there's a mixture of the two and things like that, then yes, a mileage log is a must. You have to be able to prove the mileage that you use for your business and every trip, every day, every purpose. And that's where people fail. And
right, because remember, it's not the government's responsibility to prove that you didn't. It's your responsibility to prove that you did use it for business purposes.
The government's responsibility to prove that you didn't only comes into play when it looks like you probably didn't and you're claiming something that you shouldn't be claiming. So
right.
Then, if you say you own a convenience store and you drove 100,000 kilometers in a year, they're going to be very suspicious, 100,000 kilometers or miles for that matter, depending upon where you live, that they're going to wonder, why did you drive that many miles or kilometers for picking up inventory? That looks very suspicious.
Exactly. Now, but if you've got a company, like a corporation, you're best off to claim mileage. But again, you still have to maintain that monthly mileage log, and you've got to record it and get the percentage that is refundable based on your business use. You got to keep in mind, though, that if you're claiming this mileage rate through this corporation, you can't also claim for any receipts for the vehicle that's being used during this process. That's what the mileage rate does, is it refunds you a non-taxable amount, at least here in Canada, for your vehicle use. Keep those things in mind. It's extremely important.
That's right. And there's a whole lot more things we could talk about. The topics are literally endless, and this podcast could go on for hours and hours and hours and hours, but we don't want to do that. Basically, what we want to talk is give you a couple highlights and some important topics about getting your business up and running, about registering it, how to choose your business name, and a couple expenses that are often misunderstood.
And get a bookkeeper.
Absolutely get a bookkeeper. If your business is big enough and you have an in-house bookkeeper, fantastic. If you contract it out to an accountant or a bookkeeper, fantastic. It all depends on how much time and money you want to spend. Sometimes a off-site bookkeeper is well worth its money based on or compared to an in-house bookkeeper. It depends how much time they have to spend doing your accounting needs. If you only need somebody part-time, do it off-site. Get a subcontractor, take care of it, go to a good bookkeeping firm, accounting firm, and have your financials taken care of that way.
Think of your bookkeeper as like buying an insurance policy, okay? If you pay your bookkeeper, they're going to usually, most times, work very hard to make sure that they're giving you the best advice. Well, you go to an insurance company, you pay them money on the off chance that in case something happens, that you're insured. You're doing the same thing with a bookkeeper. You're paying into an insurance policy for them to help you to get on the right track and to stay there.
Even if you had an in-house bookkeeper, you have one person doing one job, and you might require that. That's great. But what happens if that person gets fired, quits, or anything else? But if you do it off-site, then you have a firm that's doing it. They have expertise in a lot of different companies. If one person quits, then usually there's somebody else in the company that can deal with the retraining, and there's no hiccups in the flow of your business.
Hey guys, that's about it for today's episode. I really want to say thank you for listening to this special Money Mash episode of The Money Nest, and it's been brought to you by A1 Bookkeeping Services, where they specialize in small business bookkeeping, personal and business tax returns, all at affordable rates. Do you need a bookkeeper or a tax preparer? Give A1 Bookkeeping Services a call. You'll be glad that you did. You can find them on Facebook or at a-1bookkeeping.com.
Thanks everyone for listening. Please stay tuned for future full episodes as well as additional upcoming Money Mash episodes. I think this was another great episode. Lots of info tossed around.
I agree. I'm looking forward to getting the next episode up soon. Remember, take back control of your finances, make your money work for you, never work too hard for your money, and thanks everyone for listening.
This is your podcast. We want to hear from you. What financial questions do you have? Are you starting a business and don't know where to turn? Are you having issues with your income tax refunds and you don't know how to fix the problem? Or maybe you have other questions or suggestions for upcoming episodes. We want to hear from you. Drop us a line. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We compile a list of comments and suggestions, and we blend those into every episode when appropriate based on the topic. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can find The Money Nest on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or even on your favorite podcast player. You can also go to our website at themoneynest.com, and we are now on YouTube. We're just about everywhere. So this is Suzanne and Mark from The Money Nest. Thanks again for listening.
Bye
for now.
You've been listening to The Money Nest with your hosts, Suzanne and Mark McKinney, brought to you by A1 Bookkeeping Services. We're your source to help you become financially successful while assisting you in building for your future. For more information, visit us at themoneynest.com or send an email to info@themoneynest.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you can be notified when our next episode is released.